The judge looked at my husband, and then at me. "Are you absolutely certain you want to proceed with this divorce?" she asked him. He didn't even hesitate. Yes. That one word sealed his fate. Because what he didn't know, what he never bothered to know, was that by the end of this case, he wouldn't just lose his marriage, he would lose everything. But let me start at the beginning. My name is Elena Hart. I'm 34 years old. I built a financial consulting firm from scratch in my late 20s, long before I met my husband. I understand contracts, asset protection, silent structures, holding companies. I understand how people lose everything and how to make sure they don't. Ironically, the only person I trusted blindly was the man I married. Daniel was charming, confident, the kind of man who could walk into a room and own it. When we met, he was ambitious but drowning in debt from a failed startup. I believed in him. I invested in him. I helped rebuild his credit. I helped him launch a second business. Publicly, everyone thought he was the success story. Privately, I was the one holding the foundation together. For years, we looked perfect. Beautiful home, luxury vacations, growing business, power couple energy, until the late nights started, until the gym memberships doubled, until he started guarding his phone like it contained state secrets. I didn't confront him immediately. That's not how I operate. I observe. I verify. I protect. And what I discovered wasn't just an affair. It was a plan, a younger woman, an assistant, 24, blonde, predictable, but she wasn't the real problem. The real problem was the conversations I found. Messages about divorce timing, asset division, once I get half, we'll move to Miami. You deserve better than her, half. He thought he owned half. That's when I made a decision. 3 years earlier, when his business nearly collapsed, I quietly moved our major assets into a protective structure. The house went into a trust. The operating company shifted under a holding entity. That holding entity was registered solely in my name. Legally, cleanly, strategically. He signed documents without reading them because he trusted me. The irony still makes me smile. I never did it to trap him. I did it because I've seen too many women lose everything when love turns into paperwork. And then came the night he handed me the divorce papers. He looked relieved, almost excited. "I've already spoken to my lawyer," he said. He expected tears, begging, fear. Instead, I asked him one question. "Are you sure?" He mistook my calmness for weakness. He packed a suitcase and left that night, probably straight to her. What he didn't know was that I had already spoken to my lawyer too. And the moment he officially filed, everything would surface. He believed he was leaving a marriage. In reality, he was walking away from a lifestyle he could no longer afford. But here's where it gets darker. 2 days before our first court appearance, someone attempted to access one of the trust accounts. The security alert came to my phone at 2:17 a.m. Location, my financial advisor's private office. Access denied. The person on camera wasn't Danielle. It was her, and she wasn't alone. That's when I realized this divorce wasn't about love. It was about money. And desperation makes people dangerous. They attempt financial sabotage. She pushes him to fight aggressively. He threatens to expose something, and a hidden clause changes the battlefield. She pushes him to fight aggressively. He threatens to expose something, and a hidden clause changes the battlefield. The security footage played on my lawyer's screen in complete silence. 2:17 a.m. There she was, blonde, nervous, looking around like a thief who'd practiced innocence in the mirror. Behind her stood a man in a dark suit, not Daniel. "Private investigator," my lawyer muttered. I didn't blink. They weren't just snooping, they were building a case. And that meant Daniel wasn't as confident as he pretended to be. The first hearing, Daniel walked into court like a man who had already won. Tailored navy suit, calm smile, fake composure. He didn't look at me. That told me everything. Men who are guilty avoid eye contact. His lawyer opened aggressively. "Your Honor, my client was instrumental in building the marital assets. We are seeking equitable division, including 50% ownership of the primary residence, business holdings and investment accounts. 50%. I almost admired the confidence. My lawyer stood. "Your Honor, the assets in question are not marital property." The room shifted. Daniel looked at his lawyer. His lawyer looked at mine. The judge leaned forward. "Explain." And that's when it began. The structure he never understood. 3 years ago, during his second chance startup phase, Daniel signed restructuring paperwork. He believed it was refinancing. It wasn't. It was asset protection. The house placed under the Hart family trust. The operating company Transferred to Hart Holdings LLC. Hart Holdings LLC. Sole member me. Not marital. Not jointly owned. Not divisible. Legal. Clean. Executed before any documented marital instability. Danielle's lawyer objected. Hard. This is a deliberate concealment of marital assets. My lawyer calmly slid a stack of signed documents forward. All disclosures were provided at the time of execution. The defendant signed willingly. The judge reviewed the dates. 3 years prior, not during separation, not during conflict, not under duress. Danielle's face drained. That was the moment he realized something was wrong. Very wrong. The pregnancy twist. But life doesn't escalate politely. It detonates. 2 days after the hearing, I fainted in my kitchen. Stress, I assumed. Wrong. The doctor looked at me gently. You're pregnant. Silence. Daniel and I hadn't been intimate in months. The timeline was clear. The baby was his. But here's what made everything more complicated. His father. The man who changed everything. Danielle's father, Victor, built a real estate empire across 3 states. Conservative, calculated, ruthless in business, but strangely fond of me. He always said, "You think 10 steps ahead." That's rare. He never fully trusted Daniel with money. And now, if there was a grandchild involved, the inheritance map would change. Victor called me before Daniel did. I heard about the court hearing. He didn't sound angry. He sounded disappointed in his son. I won't interfere, he said, but understand something. If there's a child, my legacy will not be left in unstable hands. That wasn't a threat, it was strategy. Victor's estate wasn't small. We're talking generational wealth, commercial buildings, equity portfolios, offshore accounts. And Daniel was supposed to inherit the majority. Supposed to. Desperation makes people reckless. 3 nights later, Daniel showed up at my house. Our house. Or what he thought was our house. He looked different, less confident. "I know about the trust," he said. "I assumed you would. You trapped me." "No, I protected myself." He stepped closer. "You're pregnant, aren't you?" That stopped me. "How do you know?" He smirked. "The PI didn't just check finances." My stomach turned. He was surveilling me, tracking medical visits, monitoring my movements. "This changes things," he said quietly. "Yes, it does." He exhaled slowly. My father already called me. There it was. Victor had spoken. "And?" I asked. Danielle's jaw tightened. He said if I destabilize the situation, he'll redirect the inheritance. Redirect? To who? To the grandchild. Through a controlled trust. Managed by me. The clause. No one expected. Victor didn't wait long. Within 2 weeks, he updated his estate plan. Daniel received a formal letter. Conditional inheritance. If he contested the trust structures aggressively or attempted to prove fraudulent concealment, he would trigger a forfeiture clause, meaning he would lose direct control of the empire. Everything would pass into a custodial trust for the unborn child. Controlled by a financial guardian, selected by Victor. That guardian? Already named. Elena Hart. Me. Daniel stormed into my driveway the night he received the letter. "You planned this." I stayed calm. "Your father made his own decisions. You poisoned him against me." "No, your behavior did." He was shaking now, anger mixed with fear, because this was no longer about divorce. This was about dynasty. The affair collapses. The assistant, her name was Chloe, didn't last long once the financial reality surfaced. The Miami fantasy evaporated. The 50% payout never existed. And suddenly Daniel wasn't a rising entrepreneur. He was a man in litigation, possibly disinherited. Chloe stopped appearing in court, stopped answering his calls. Money is attractive, instability isn't. The counterattack, but Daniel wasn't finished. If he couldn't get half through divorce, he'd try another route. His lawyer filed a motion claiming, like gummit, emotional manipulation, undue influence during asset transfer, intentional concealment of pregnancy timing. Attempted isolation from paternal rights. They were painting me as strategic and predatory, which, ironically, I am strategic, but not criminal. The hearing was brutal. Character attacks, questioning my integrity, insinuations that I engineered the marriage collapse. I let them talk, because facts don't get emotional. Dates, signatures, bank trails, email disclosures, everything aligned. Danielle had signed every document voluntarily. No deception. No hidden clauses, no fraud, just foresight. Then it got darker. 3 weeks before the final ruling, my car brakes malfunctioned. On the highway, at 60 miles per hour. I survived, barely. The mechanic found the issue immediately. Cut brake line, not wear and tear, cut. Police were involved. Daniel had no alibi for that afternoon, but there was no direct evidence tying him to it. And that's when I realized something terrifying. A man who feels like he's losing everything becomes unpredictable, not just financially, mentally. Victor called me that night. His voice was colder than I'd ever heard it. If my son is involved in this, he will not recover. That wasn't fatherly concern. That was corporate termination language. The final court date. The courtroom felt heavier. Daniel looked exhausted, not angry, defeated. The judge summarized, trust structures valid, holdings legally separate. No evidence of fraudulent intent, custodial rights shared. Child support recalculated based on actual income, not projected wealth. Then came the inheritance issue. Victor had submitted an affidavit confirming estate restructuring. The judge acknowledged it but clarified, inheritance decisions are outside marital division. Translation. Daniel's loss was self-inflicted. The divorce was finalized. He walked away with his car, personal savings, minor equity in his current operating account. Not the house, not the holding company, not the investment portfolios, not the empire, and potentially not the legacy, the aftermath. Weeks later, I gave birth to a son. Victor visited quietly. He held the baby and said only one thing: stability matters. Daniel asked to see his child. Of course he did, and I allowed it, because whatever happened between us, a child deserves a father. But the power dynamic had shifted permanently. Daniel wasn't the heir anymore. He wasn't the provider. He wasn't the architect of the future. He was a cautionary tale. But here's the truth: no one knows. 3 days after the divorce finalized, Chloe filed a civil claim against Daniel, pregnancy, not mine, hers. And this time, there was no trust protecting him, no father shielding him, no structured exit, just consequences. And that's when I realized this story wasn't about revenge, it was about leverage, and leverage changes everything. When Chloe filed her claim, Daniel didn't tell anyone, not me, not his father, not even his lawyer at first. I found out because Victor called. His voice was steel. There's another pregnancy. I didn't react immediately. Is it confirmed? She's demanding a DNA test. Silence stretched between us. Then he said something that changed everything. If the child is his, I will not divide my estate twice. Not anger, not emotion, just mathematics. Daniel showed up at my house 2 days later. Not aggressive, not arrogant. Desperate. She's lying, he said the moment I opened the door. About what? The baby, the timing, everything. Then take the test. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous tell I used to find endearing. It's not that simple. It never is. Chloe wasn't just asking for child support. She was asking for recognition, public recognition. And if Daniel acknowledged a second child during active estate restructuring, Victor could interpret it as instability, recklessness, risk, which meant the test was scheduled quietly, private lab, no press, no public record yet. Victor insisted on attending, so did I, not because I cared about Chloe, but because whatever that result said would affect my son's future. Chloe walked in wearing white, soft, innocent, calculated. She didn't look scared, she looked confident. That bothered me. Daniel avoided eye contact with everyone. The swabs were taken, sealed, signed. 48-hour turnaround, the longest 48 hours of his life. We gathered in Victor's office, mahogany desk, floor-to-ceiling windows, the kind of room where decisions shape generations. The envelope sat unopened. Victor slid it toward Daniel. Open it. His hands shook. Paper tore. Eyes scanned. Color drained. Chloe was pregnant, but the child wasn't his. Silence. Then Chloe laughed. Actually laughed. You really thought I wouldn't check first? Victor's head snapped toward her. She folded her arms. I wanted security. That's all. Security. That word again. She had run her own private test before filing the claim. Daniel wasn't the father, but she knew the accusation alone would destabilize him. Delay the divorce, pressure Victor, force negotiation. She underestimated one thing. Victor doesn't negotiate under threat. He eliminates it. Ronner Cressed, Victor's legal team moved fast. Defamation, attempted financial coercion, fraudulent claim. Chloe didn't have the resources to fight. Within weeks, she withdrew everything. Publicly. But the damage to Daniel? Already done. Because while the baby wasn't his, the affair was. And Victor doesn't forget humiliation. 2 weeks later, Victor summoned Daniel alone. But Daniel called me afterward, crying. I had never heard that sound from him before. He rewrote everything, Daniel said. Everything? I'm no longer primary heir. Victor had activated the irrevocable clause. All controlling interest in the empire would pass into a generational trust. Beneficiary, my son. Daniel would receive a fixed annual stipend, conditional, behavior-based, revocable if instability continued. In simple terms, he went from future billionaire to salaried employee in his own bloodline. You can hide infidelity. You can hide divorce. You can't hide financial restructuring at that level. Board members talk. Executives whisper. Investors speculate. The narrative formed quickly. Daniel was reckless, emotionally unstable, financially careless. Victor stepped back publicly, installed interim oversight. The market responded positively. Translation: the empire performed better without Daniel. That was the final humiliation. Daniel came to see me one final time. Not angry, empty. You won, he said. I wasn't competing. You took everything. No, you handed it away. He looked at our son sleeping in the bassinet. I was supposed to give him the world. You still can, I said quietly. Just not the way you imagined. He shook his head. You planned for me to fail. That's when I finally told him the truth. No, I planned for survival. There's a difference. The secret I never told anyone. You want to know the part no one knows? 3 years ago, when I restructured everything, it wasn't just because of financial risk. I had already found emotional messages back then, not physical proof, but enough. I didn't confront him. I protected myself instead. The trust wasn't revenge, it was insurance. Because love without leverage is vulnerability, and I refuse to be vulnerable without protection. The twist no one expected. 6 months later, Victor suffered a stroke. Minor, but enough to accelerate decisions. He finalized everything while conscious, irrevocable, untouchable. And then he did something shocking. He appointed Daniel as co-trustee, not controller, co-trustee, under supervision. Why? Because Victor believes something I didn't understand until then. Men who lose everything sometimes rebuild correctly. Daniel wasn't erased. He was restructured, just like the assets. Daniel sees his son weekly. He works under oversight, earns performance-based bonuses, rebuilds credibility slowly. Chloe disappeared. Married someone else within months. The empire remains stable, the trust remains intact, and I remain in control of what matters: security, stability, future. But here's the truth that makes this story darker than revenge. I don't hate Daniel. I loved him once, and sometimes when he looks at our son, I see regret that no court order could ever enforce. That's a heavier sentence than losing money. He thought he was divorcing a wife. He didn't realize he was negotiating with a strategist. And strategists don't gamble, they calculate.